Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is the CFO Leadership Council Atlanta chapter. We have a fantastic discussion today. It's very timely, of course, and I'm really glad you're here to participate. I'm Jennifer Langley. I manage our Southeast chapters and also chair our national conference. And we have a fantastic co-chairs here, Bona Allen and Karen Reed. 1 second, and I'm going to turn it over to them. I just want to share with you that we will have polling questions throughout. We will also keep our lines muted just to hear so that we can hear the speakers during the presentation. But please participate. We want you to either turn your mic on, a camera on, chat, whatever feels comfortable for you to make this a lively event and discussion. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize our full steering committee, and you can see those listed here, which, as Jennifer mentioned, Bona and I share co-leads, co-chairs, and but we utilize their participation in defining topics relevant and getting speakers. So thanks to all the steering committee for the efforts and moving this organization forward and making sure we have quality content.
1 second. Okay, there we go.
And we have this particular chapter, which of course, as members, you can participate in many of the chapter events throughout the nation. But the Atlanta specific chapter has these 3 upcoming events. The customer experience is going to be headed up by John Head with Planful. And that'll be about how we engage in our new normal with customers and, in COVID and hopefully coming out of COVID. So that should be a very interesting topic, as well as getting back to work while managing your remote workforce. And hindsight is 2020, 2019. So that'll be an interesting one too. Different topics than we envisioned at the beginning of the year, must say. So, so we hopefully you'll join us for those. And then for our sponsors. So I'm going to ask if any of these sponsors are on the line to say a few words. So we'll start with if Andrew Wagsback is on the line with Colliers.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. Glad to be a participant this morning and contribute to such a great finance community in Atlanta. Just a quick word. I saw a great article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about they interviewed CEOs from Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan all the way to Mark Zuckerberg on working from home, returning to work, when and how they're going to do that. And that's part of our December 10th conversation. So we get a lot of questions around that. And I'm happy to circulate that PDF article, which was fantastic, to anyone that wants to send me an email to Andrew Wagaspak at Colliers.com, andrew.wagaspak@Colliers.com. Thanks.
Thank you for your sponsorship, Andrew. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Benny from Williams Benader Libby, I know you're on the line. Would you like to say a few words, please?
Yes, good morning. Excited to be part of this group, and I just came onto the steering committee a couple of weeks ago, and I'm with Williams Benader Libby, and we're a full-service CPA firm here in Atlanta who serves growing entrepreneurial businesses, audit, reviews, taxes, financial planning, the full gamut of a CPA service. And excited about today's topic, really a timely one and very near and dear to our hearts here at Williams Benader Libby. We have a very diverse workforce, and we're very proud of that, and we're excited to learn how we can help them be more successful.
Great, thank you for that, Benny. So is anybody from NetSuite on? Is Jimmy on? Yes, hi Jimmy.
Hello and good morning to everybody. Just want to echo my fellow sponsors, say thank you for joining this morning. Also very excited about this topic. If anybody has questions about NetSuite, please shoot them my way. The #1 cloud ERP globally. So if you're interested in financials and inventory and all that good stuff, please email my way. My email address, jlebow, LEBOW @netsuite.com.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for your sponsorship.
Absolutely.
So from Planful, I think we have Steve Clay on the line.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And at Planful, our platform helps finance leaders and budget owners manage and improve their FP&A processes, driving better decision-making. We do that by compressing the amount of time and effort it takes to manage, build, and improve your plans and your reports. And it basically fosters this collaboration across the business. But thanks very much. Glad to be here this morning.
Thank you, Steve. And Leah Mazar from Siegfried Group, I think you're on.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I echo everybody that I'm excited about this topic this morning, and I'm fortunate enough to know some of the panelists, so excited about that as well. I'm a director over at the Siegfried Group, and we work alongside financial executives like yourself on their most strategic accounting and finance projects. So just excited to hear what everyone has to say today.
Great, thank you, Leah. So is Rhett on from Gambrill and Russell?
I don't think he's joined yet.
All right, well, that's a law firm that sponsors us. So great, they do great work, and they put on a few of our programs as well to give us law school for the CFO. So I'm sure look forward to that later at some point. Ryan Shearer is on from USI.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists. I'm Ryan Shearer with USI Insurance Services here in Atlanta. Focused on helping employers with their employee health insurance benefit programs. Busy time of year right now. Everybody's getting their health insurance renewals and identifying what costs are going to be next year. So if you're in that boat and need some help, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, and just real quick, Karen, we're going to do a pop-up program coming up in October with USI. I'm talking about insurance renewals and all of that. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to share a few words more about it.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously with employee health insurance benefits, costs continue to go up year over year. And we have some tools and some expertise on our staff at USI that can help you identify what questions to ask, how to negotiate the renewal, what to look for in the financials to help make a better decision going forward. And then, what are the latest trends and items that employers are doing to reduce costs. So excited to bring that to you guys here in a few weeks.
And quite timely, as you noted. So also we switched to USI about a year ago, and I know we've been very pleased with the services. So thank you. Appreciate your sponsorship. So from Fifth Third, we have Matt Sana on.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to the topic today. Fifth Third Bank, we're the 9th largest bank in the U.S. Also about the topic today, we've recently committed some large commitments to diversity-owned businesses and looking forward to distributing capital here in the Atlanta market and all the other regions that we serve so that we can support diversity and inclusion in our business community. And so thanks for having us today and looking forward to the topic.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so now I'll turn it over to Bona to talk a little bit about our upcoming CFO Leadership Conference.
Well, thanks, Karen. Yeah, this is a conference that I've been to several years. Generally, it's in Boston. And obviously, this has been a great pivot, actually, this year. There's been some great content as part of CFO Week. So it's in conjunction and in partnership with MIT, their graduate schools up there. So we've got wonderful speakers from MIT and from the CFO community, including what's on the slide now. There's a highlight of a business of sports panel. And so obviously the whole world has pivoted. And so I think this is a highly germane and topic right now as well. So this conference is free with your premium membership. So if you're interested in joining and going to this conference virtually, then please do. I mean, it'll be a great time for content and CPE if you need that, and also learning and coming away with action items that we can all use to help our companies and our careers.
Bona, I have one comment real quick. We do actually have the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer from Goldman Sachs speaking.
Great.
It will be moderated by a diversity MIT professor that heads up the diversity for the institute. So that's going to be a really exciting discussion as well, relevant to our topic today.
And the dates are November 11th through the 13th.
That's correct.
Good, thank you. So clearly the leadership of the CFO Leadership Council has brought highly germane and highly relevant topics right away into this conference. So please join us for CFO Week, and this portion is the CFO Leadership Conference. As you can see now, here's some member benefits for joining the CFO Leadership Council. And I won't go through all these, but CFO Connect is a big one that is that's sort of a listserv where you can ask questions to the whole community and get lots of great responses. One thing I've enjoyed about this program and the membership, my membership in the CFO Leadership Council is the number of people that I meet. Even online and virtually, we can still meet lots of people, and it's a great resource for networking and again, enhancing our abilities to help our companies and our careers. So now we'll turn it over to this esteemed panel. Cherie, I'm going to introduce, I'll just hand it straight to you because I understand you guys are going to introduce yourselves. So please help me welcome Cherie Knowles and the rest of the panelists.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the CFOLC really for hosting and creating space for us to have this very timely and relevant conversation. My name is Cherie Knowles, and I am the founding member of two human resources consulting firms. We are based in the Southeast, but we work nationally. I'm not going to read my bio, it's on the slide. What I really want to say though, especially as it relates to this topic, I'm a Black mother. And I have two young men who fit that targeted demographic of people who are being mistreated, marginalized, and frankly, murdered. And so as a mother, a Black mother, this is a really important topic. It hits home for me. I've been in human resources for about 25 years. I've always worked in the D&I space as an HR VP. I'm really bringing conversations to the workplace around justice and equality and diversity and inclusion. But I will say at this point in time in our country, we're just in some really interesting times, I'll say that. And things are hitting home for a lot of people. So I am excited to be here. I am honored, beyond thrilled, to be able to introduce you to our panelists and to have a discussion, not just with the panelists, but with you as well. So we would love to hear from you in the chat or in the Q&A section, because the more we engage with each other, I think the better we will be and the better we'll serve our companies. So with that, I'm going to start by introducing CB Bowman. And CB, if you could just say a few things about yourself and why you're really passionate about being in this space right now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Jennifer, for having me at this conference today. So I play in two spaces. One is I'm the CEO of the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches. And those are people who work with executives to either modify their behavior or develop leadership skills. And it's a really exciting field, and I hope that you all have a coach. The other area that I'm very much involved with as I'm getting ready to launch my new company, which is Workplace Racial Equality. And I am super passionate about this. When I look at some of the statistics about what people of color make in terms of income, I think the latest report said that since the Equal Rights Amendment went through, we are literally declining in our earning power to the point of 63%. And it's even higher for those people of color who have college degrees. So I'm really, it just is, you can hear the passion in my voice. This has got to stop. And, you know, one person can't do it by themselves. We all have to group together and make sure that the playing field gets leveled. So that's about me, and I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you, CV. I'd like to introduce you to Earl Fagan. So Earl.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Cherie, for the great introduction. My bio sort of speaks for, my professional career, I'm certainly proud to be a member of Amazon, a great company to work for. But, you know, my passion in this space, you know, comes from being a Black male in the field of public accounting for over 23 years, where I worked for KPMG. And, you know, in those years, it was an interesting career path, and seeing yourself oftentimes as the only person in the room, or seeing as the only Black person in the room, or seeing sometimes opportunities not afforded to you that were afforded to your peers who were not of the same color. My passion comes from being a 30-year member of the National Association of Black Accountants. And as a member of the National Association of Black Accountants, I recently stepped down as the vice chairman of the board. But all my activity over the years has been in helping to identify and promote opportunities for African Americans in the field of finance, accounting, and business related functions. You know, and I do that, and I'm passionate about that because of the 9 founders of NABA 50 years ago who founded this order. We just celebrated 51 years in existence. That they saw that there was a need and there was a disparity and an opportunity for African Americans to excel in the field of finance and accounting. And so their inspiration, their motivation, their commitment inspired me to do the same, because, you know, I would be negligent if I didn't take that passion and that commitment that they made and not do the same as I see others coming up behind me. So, you know, that's why I'm so passionate, you know, about this space and trying to help, you know, identify opportunities and create a level playing ground, not just for African Americans in the profession, but for all of us, and make sure there's equality for all. Anytime there's favoritism for one nationality or group, it's a disservice to another. So I'm about equality for all, but that's the passion that drives me in this space. And I look forward to our discussion today on awareness and inclusion within the corporate arena.
Thank you, Errol. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Chris Simmons.
Good morning. I guess I come to this almost by accident. I spent most of my early career working for Bankers Trust Company in New York, a big leveraged buyout bank. I was an M&A guy there. Then I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I was a M&A guy again and ran the internal M&A function. And one day my CEO called me and told me he wanted to run diversity. And I think he was surprised how quickly I accepted it, because, you know, inside, I'm a Black guy who grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I was 11 years old when Martin Luther King was killed in my hometown. And so I'm passionate about it because, first of all, it affects my people. But I'm also passionate about it because as I navigated corporate America and became one of the highest ranking Blacks in the history of Pricewaterhouse, I realized that some skills I was deploying were not available and inside of many of my minority and female peers. And I also saw a lot of white people and men when it comes to gender, and straight people when it comes to gays, who wanted to do better, wanted to make the environment better, but were afraid to. And so I find, from a professional perspective, the diversity arena to be one of the least optimized areas of organizational behavior. I think finance functions generally run pretty well across companies, but diversity is usually not well run, and it's not well run from either the perspective of those trying to get ahead or from those trying to help people get ahead. So I like to go where the fire is, and the fire is still in the diversity area.
That's awesome. Thank you, Chris. So we want to know who's in the room. So if you are comfortable in the chat, I have one quick question for you. If you were rating your effectiveness around diversity, equity, and inclusion, so it's whether it's a program, whether it's the culture, whether it's your activities, how would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 meaning not existent, you're thinking about it, or 5 that you think you are spot on, your organization is rocking and rolling. So how would you rate that, 1 to 5? You can type in the chat. We're always curious just to know where people are. Good. Thank you. Karen said 3.5. I see a couple of threes coming in. Fours. Great. Thank you, Ryan. Threes. This is great. Thank you, John. So this helps us as we shape this discussion. We have a framework and we have a couple of questions that we're going to deploy, but understanding who's in the room and where you are from your perspective on this spectrum is incredibly helpful. So thank you. I see the fours coming in. So this is fantastic. I also see a poll on the screen. Thank you, Jennifer. Do you think that your workplace is inclusive? So absolutely world class. Yes, but needs some improvement. No, that's why I'm here today, because I want it to be, or you don't think it's applicable. So if you could also answer the poll and hit submit at the bottom of that screen. And so Jennifer, let us know once people have responded to the poll, and that'll again give us just some information about who's in our space today.
Jennifer, I don't see the poll.
The poll is up on the screen, but you guys don't need to worry about it for the discussion. They will just pop up every about 9 to 10 minutes so that we can do the CPE credit.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. The other thing that I'll say as we get started is we are all in a virtual community, and we want to practice inclusion and respectfulness together in our virtual space. So let's use the chat. If you hear something that you think is spot on, it's great, whether it's from the panelists or a comment in the chat, call out that person, call them out by name and say, great job, Mark Peterson, great job, Benny. Right? Because we want to model the behavior that you want to employ in your organization. So if we can all agree to do that, that will be fantastic. And so let's go ahead and get ourselves started. We know right now we're living in unprecedented times. There is so much happening in our world and also in our country, whether it is the pandemic and its impact on people, whether that's people being sick or people being afraid of getting sick, and people who are passing away, frankly, from this dreaded disease. We have had our economic crises that we're not yet out of the woods here. We're also experiencing, as we all know, racial injustice in a way that has raised our level of consciousness. It's interesting because racial injustice is not new. Chris mentioned that, you referenced it in your introduction. Things have been happening to people of color for a very long time, but this year, for whatever reason, it's raising our level of awareness and consciousness. And so of all the things happening between earlier this year, midsummer, and even yesterday's decision regarding Breonna Taylor's case, all of this is in the forefront for us. And I know, and we believe that you as companies, you want to do something. You absolutely are feeling it. You want to do something. But here's the thing. Many of the companies and clients that we've worked with, they are treating diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're going to say DEI or D&I for short, like a fashion trend. It's the hot thing right now. It is top of mind, and they're responding and reacting without really having a roadmap. So Chris, I'm going to kick it over to you. Where do you see the risk in jumping out the gate with a response and trying to get on the bandwagon without having some intentionality behind it?
Well, the number one thing that most minorities, and specifically Black people, are thinking right now is, let's see how long they focus on it this time. If they're not articulating that, I can assure you they're thinking it. And so if you rush out and do something without a long-term plan and a long-term commitment and a sense of how you're going to be granular in ways that matter to that person on your job, it will backfire on you eventually. When I was still at Pricewaterhouse, I used to say, we can have these great meetings and have a D&I show, but what the people in the back of the room are thinking is, okay, but when I get back to my desk how is my boss treating me? Is he treating me any differently? Is he looking at me any differently? Is she looking at me any differently? And so you really have to have an integrated plan. And this is where, frankly, having some type of outside consultant or somebody you can bounce ideas off of, maybe it's just a good Black friend who knows something about business, to sort of review what you're thinking of doing. They can help you make sure you have a holistic approach. It can also help you avoid some landmines that you might stumble over on your way to trying to be helpful. I can tell you there's a lot of raw sensitivities right now. And so it's very easy to do the right thing, but do it the wrong way in somebody's opinion. And I know a lot of you have concerns about that. And, I think you just need to make sure your own personal board of advisors is in place. And you might want to, be sure you're listening to the right people too. Because I can tell you that some people will tell you some things that'll get you into more trouble.
Absolutely.
Carrie, I'd love to jump in here.
Sure.
I have been going back and forth in my mind, waffling whether or not this is a fashion statement. And, I've been around for quite some time. We won't discuss how long. But I can tell you that I remember watching the march for Martin Luther King, and I remember Malcolm X being shot. And what feels different to me this time is that we actually witnessed somebody being killed with intent. And we not only witnessed it, it was embedded in our minds through media. So back in the day, we didn't have Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and it wasn't repeated in our mind. I mean, I think none of us will forget 9/11. I know I won't because I was in the city, but it's that constant visual image. And now what we have is, because it's so embedded in our heads, every time somebody is shot, whether it's a police officer or a person of color, our minds are going to be triggered by the purposefully killing of a person. And so I think that it's not going to go back to what it was before. At least I'm going back and forth in my mind. And as people say to me, well, this won't last. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think that now, every time this happens, there's going to be a flare-up. It's going to be in the face of corporate America and America in itself. And if your organization, because now we're talking about organizations, hasn't put in a true, purposefully, intentive plan, people are going to say, but I thought you did this before. What the heck is going on? So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you are spot on, CB, and thank you for that. When we, and me in particular, when I think about diversity and inclusion, to me, diversity is about representation. And I heard some of you say you have a very diverse workforce, and that's a great start. Because that is about representation. Do you have the folks in the room? Inclusion, though, is about the employee's experience. And when you have diversity, but you might not have inclusion, I think it makes for some really interesting experiences. Earl, what do you think it looks like when a company is completely diverse but not inclusive? What might that look like?
It's funny. I was just thinking about that. I for anyone on the call, I would say, imagine that a good friend invited you to go to the Super Bowl with them, and you get all the way there, and they say, okay, well, you can tailgate outside. I'm actually going to go into the stadium. So you've been invited to the Super Bowl, and you travel with this person to go, but you're standing outside in the stadium tailgating while I go in and I celebrate, and I'm in all the hype and grandeur of the Super Bowl. I was just thinking about that before you asked the question. it's painful to be, as an individual, to be, on the outside looking in. And it does a couple of things. It erodes that person or that group of people's confidence. It erodes whatever progress that you have made, in diversity, because it doesn't seem genuine to not include that person. And then, from a company perspective, it's a huge waste of resources and talent. If you've taken the time, and we all know the cost it takes to recruit and identify qualified talent, and then to not utilize those individuals to, to their potential, the potential that is going to be great for them as for personal development, the potential that's going to drive to the improvement of your business, that skill set and intention that's going to drive to the satisfaction of your clients and your customers, then it's a grandiose waste of time. You might as well just throw the money out the window, just from a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes apparent to the culture that you're trying to establish that it's not genuine. And believe it or not, it will become apparent to your client base and to your customer base, who, remember, we all work with very intelligent people. So people can start to pick up and see, what's real and what's not when it comes to your diversity and inclusion efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sheree, I want to
Yeah.
chime in on this one.
Yeah.
From my perspective, a real tangible manifestation of what it looks like is when you've got diversity at the lower levels, but not at management levels and not at the senior levels. And I noticed that most of the people on this call are in much smaller organizations than the one I spent most of my career in. And I have sort of a challenge thought for you guys, which is that you may tell yourself, you have very logical reasons why that's the case. Your diverse people are the younger ones. They haven't been there as long. Over time we'll get there. I can guarantee you, your young diverse employees, they're thinking BS. You need to go out and find some experienced Black folk, women, gay folk, whatever. Go out of your way to make all levels diverse as fast as you can, because you're being judged, and you may be being judged unfairly, but make no mistake, you're being judged. And every time the 28-year-old diverse person doesn't see any 48-year-old people at a certain level, it makes them think you really don't care. No matter what you may be doing for them, it makes them think you really don't care. And so you really need to do something unusual to counter that assumption that people are going to have in their heads.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, CB, I want you to speak, but I'm going to ask you to add on to what you're getting ready to say. What behavior might it look like behaviorally when an organization is diverse and not inclusive? So please, CB.
Well, thank you. I think that Chris really just summed that up very nicely. But I do want to warn, it's not a but, it's an and. I do want to make us aware of something in the polls. I think it's a shame we can't see the faces of people that are on this call, but I suspect that the numbers are skewed, because in looking at the names of people, I would say that the representation for the Black community is probably less than 5%. So when you look at these poll numbers and, people are saying that, yeah, we have world class, or we have diversity and inclusion, or we are doing well, that is from a white person's perspective. So we need to be real careful when we analyze numbers. And I don't mean offense for anybody, but you have got to ask people who work in your company of color whether or not they feel that way. And this is the hard part, you might not get the truth, because they may not want to disclose. And I see Bono shaking his head, yes. They may not want to disclose for fear of their jobs, for fear of being identified as a rebel. So we really have to pay attention to how we interpret numbers because it can get us in trouble.
Absolutely. Thank you, CV. That's absolutely right. To give you a practical example of diverse but not inclusive behavior, let's say you are having a meeting and you think, oh, we don't need to invite that person. Maybe they don't have as much to contribute because they're new and young, or they haven't been in this industry or in this experience for a long time. And so you end up, let's say, meeting with the same people that you always meet with. And so what you're missing is diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and other representation. So that's one real practical behavioral example that you could stop just like this and really think about, who do I need in the room in that meeting? Even if you're thinking they don't contribute 100%, 5%, 10% is important. And so thinking about it from that perspective.
Can I think what you just said, Sherry?
Mm-hmm.
God, you just said so much that was so true. I'm having trouble getting out my response to that. But here's the other thing that happens. If you don't invite somebody of color because you don't think that they are qualified to come to the meeting, as Sherry just said, the operative words are you don't think. You haven't asked the person, so you don't know. So that's one thing that happens as a result of that. The other thing that happens as a result of that, especially if the person is not qualified to attend the meeting and you haven't bothered to explain why, you don't give that person the opportunity to improve and be invited to the next meeting.
That's right. That's exactly right. Thank you, CB. You're spot on. While we're talking to you right now, I want to ask you something specifically because of the new work and the new company that you're launching. It's not new work. You've been doing this for a while. We think about diversity, and I'm sure we're thinking about inclusion as our CFO Leadership Council here, but we don't always think about equity. So equity has become the hot new word, right? And justice, these are new words that are coming mainstream, not new in the sense that they haven't been around. Given the work that you're doing, tell us briefly how equity factors into D&I.
So for me, equity is just a financial term. Really what we're saying is equality. As I said, I've been around the block. Let's just break it down to basics. Are you equal? And the answer is no. And then the work that we're doing does not put blame or say the person is wrong. What we're looking at is what's inside, what's the unconscious reasoning that you're doing what you're doing. And we're exposing people to look at it from a different perspective. We're not saying that you have to do this, because I think that's wrong. People are not going to do anything that they don't feel that they want to do, but give them a reason. It's basic behavior change. If you take one behavior away, you have to replace it with another. And what we hope to do is to show there's an opportunity for another behavior based on fact, based upon where you personally want to go. I just want to take a moment to tell you this story. I was in a meeting with 5 white men right after the killing of Floyd. And they said to me, CB, we're so sorry. We didn't know that you've been through all of this. We just don't know what to do. We feel so guilty. We don't even know what to say. And I said, stop. First of all, you don't know what I've been through. Second, this is like scratching your glasses. If you scratch your glasses and you put them on, eventually you don't see it, right? It's just a scratch. If you drop your glasses on concrete and they shatter, you can't put them on again. You can't see through it. So where we are is America has shattered the glasses. Mm-hmm. So now the question is, now that you can't see through them, what do you personally want to do about this. Not what is your neighbor doing? What is the person in your office doing? What do you want, the operative word, to be responsible for?
Yeah.
You know,
Thank
and
you, Stephen.
CB brings up a great point about changing behavior. And, you know, one of the things I think that individually, you know, people should consider, and then that's something you can, and you can expand this into your organizations, is really take a look and think about unconscious bias and how you're addressing that. I myself took myself through an unconscious bias exercise a few months ago and realized, hey, even me, you know, I'm not perfect. There's unconscious bias, you know, that I have to consider that's there, and we all have it, whether we want to admit it or not. And I think that's a good start. Take a look at how you might be, you know, unaware that you're judging or categorizing or placing people in certain pockets, and it's not because you're intentionally being, you know, racist or intentionally being prejudiced. It's the unconscious bias, and I invite everyone to take a step back and do that individually. And when you do it, then try to do it with, you know, your teams, especially with your leadership team, because one of the points that Chris made earlier about, oh well, we've got, you know, African Americans, you know, on this staff or in the middle management. So so the justification might be, oh well, you know, we've got diversity. You know, I never forget about this quote I heard from Hubert Jolly, the former CEO of Best Buy, and talking about diversity. He said, "You can't be what you can't see." So if you don't see diversity in your workplace, you can't be it. And how do you ever expect to really promote and bring confidence to your staff or to your client base or your customers that you really are focused on diversity and inclusion? But the analysis of that unconscious bias, I think, is a great step, and I invite everyone to start there.
Yeah, and I want to build on it for 1 second, Sherry. Unconscious bias does not necessarily mean negative bias. So I'm unconsciously biased against peas and broccoli, but they're very healthy for you. So don't be afraid to look at that part of your ecosystem. It's important to know so that you can move forward. Otherwise, what can happen is double talk. And then people get so confused about your message because you're saying I want diversity, but something inside of you, little teeny piece of you says, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want my child to marry that Black person. And then when you start talking about diversity, it comes out confusing. And people say, well, I don't get it. What are they really talking about? So remember that double talk.
Absolutely. We do a lot of work in a space of unconscious bias and microaggressions and things like that. And one of the things that studies show and that we prove out is that our morals and our intention and the values that we carry can often be incongruent with our unconscious bias. They don't always align, and that's hard for us to reconcile, but that is the truth. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. And Chris, I'm coming to you. When we're thinking about all the things that have happened just in 2020, I'll throw out some names for us. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake. You're seeing Black Lives Matter, BLM everywhere. And so the argument or the statement that I experienced from people who are not of color is that all lives matter. So Chris, I'm throwing this over to you. Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. What's your thought on that? What's your response to that?
If you want Black people to hate you, just say that in response to Black Lives Matter, and you will be guaranteed to have a place on the hate space. And I'm actually a fairly centrist Black person. What we hear is, we don't want to hear about your unique problems when you say that. And the fact of the matter is that anybody that doesn't recognize that Black people have a unique set of challenges in this country is either really dumb are really just indifferent. You know, I led the fight for GLBT rights in the Big Four accounting space, but I always told people there's like a Maslow's hierarchy of need when it comes to the diversity landscape. Yes, women have certain issues, but as I remind women, y'all weren't getting lynched. Gay people have issues. Actually, some of them do get lynched. They might be the closest to Black folk on the spectrum, frankly. But we know, and America knows, that Black people have a unique set of issues. And so, yeah, when we hear the attempted equation of everybody's issues to ours, we categorically reject that. And, you know, we also, in a professional context, and I know some of you on the call may be thinking, well, that's all well and good, but you know, nobody has to worry about getting, you know, killed at work in my workplace. So you know that doesn't matter. So we can keep doing business as usual. When Black professionals, I don't care how well educated you are. I've got 2 Harvard degrees. I've been to some really rarefied spaces. All of us, we see the clear connection between the George Floyds and us, because we know that what happens to those people in the streets is just another indication of what we fear goes through the minds of white people in a whole set of other conditions that may not result in us getting killed. It just might result in us not being taken to that meeting, or not being given that promotion, or not being given that VP slot upstairs. So do not ever think that, I can show you, I mean, I've got some of the most sophisticated Black friends in America. We see the connection, and we're looking to see from some of the people who don't look like us, whether you understand the connection too and what you're willing to do about it. And when we don't see action, and when we don't see any emotion, silence, I actually told somebody this a few months ago, silence is not an option. It's not an option. Silence will definitely be viewed as lack of concern, and we don't like lack of concern. Who would?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. CB, you know, you were talking about what's happening in this. We've all watched, or we've heard of, if we didn't watch it, George Floyd being murdered by having a knee on his neck. So the knee on the neck is a physical thing that happened, but there's also a psychological association with it as well. And people are bringing that to your workplace. So CB, can you talk about a little bit more, expound on Chris's comments about that connection between the outside world, but the psychological impact inside an office?
Yeah, so the knee, think of the knee on the neck, on the throat, choking somebody. It's symbolic and it's real, because in the workplace, your voice, the Black voice, is being choked out. Their breath is being choked out. They can't speak up. Look, I had one of the members of my association who is white said, and has a Black client, said, my Black client wants to know why he can't tell a joke in the workplace. Now, jokes are considered part of life. It's part of the breathing process. It's part of the relaxation process. Even if you're not good at it, I can assure you at one time or another, you tried to say something that you thought was funny. Can you imagine if that part of your life, like a cancer, is cut out? That somebody has to ask, why can't I tell a joke? Or how can I tell a joke and not be excluded? This is a knee in your throat. This is killing your voice box.
Mm-hmm.
This is killing your ability to breathe, to speak, to live. That's how it translates into the corporate world.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to add, you know, if you think about it, all of those on this call who are in a position of leadership or influence, you know, at their companies, you know, anytime you don't take that person to a meeting, anytime you don't include that person in discussions about growth of the business. Anytime they're not selected to be on an engagement team, anytime they're not promoted, anytime they're not selected for something that gives them exposure to a client, that is the corporate knee on the neck, because they're not getting the opportunity. And I want to clarify that this is not just at the junior levels. I mean, I remember experiencing this, as a staff accountant, staff auditor, where I was always pushed to be on the government and not-for-profit clients because that was the group that the Black partner led. Yet I wasn't getting pulled to be on the Home Depot audit team, the Coca-Cola audit team, the larger clients. So you start to see those things, and that's at the junior level. And I'm going to share a story with you all about how it happens at the senior level. I was managing director. I was the global lead partner for Delta Airlines. I was the global lead partner for Newell Rubbermaid, advisory lead partner for Coca-Cola, and looking to still expand, my book, because some of you who have been in this field understand, and Chris knows, your book of business at that level, you've got to have that book of business coming in. And so I sat down with a very senior partner talking about how to continue to expand my book of business, having already been leader of these accounts, lead a partner for these accounts for several years, and talking to him about, how to expand and growth in other areas. I'm a managing director. And this man looks at me and he says, Earl, I don't really know how to help you. Perhaps you should talk to your Black friends and your Black clients and see if they can help you figure it out. So I'm sharing that story because this is not just at the junior levels. This is real and happening at the very senior levels. And it's up to all of us to approach, and address and understand that these things are happening. And so the first thing I ask is to listen and be aware. I'm going to go this next step is, if you remember the movie A Time to Kill, when Matthew McConaughey gave his speech at the end about imagine the little girl and everything she went through, and then it had them close their eyes and he said, now imagine she's white. Put yourself in those shoes and it'll make you think a little differently about how to approach it.
Thank you, Chris. Given the work that you've done with the National Association of Black Accountants, similar to you, I was on the board of the National Association for African Americans in HR. And working with professionals, one of the things that they've bumped up against is this stereotype or characterization of the angry Black man or angry Black woman. So Chris, Earl, sorry, can you speak to that? Because I'm sure you probably heard that as well.
That's funny. I don't know why I'm on these movie references now from the Avengers, where the Incredible Hulk's secret was, I'm always angry. No, but that's unfortunate. I think that minorities and women have especially had this challenge of, when you want to speak your mind or share your feelings, well, then you're angry or you're emotional. And that's unfortunate. I think it's the passion. We are a passionate people, and it's passion. And I think that what there needs to be is an openness to saying, hey, let's hear, this point of view, and let's embrace, this passion. And it's the difficult and challenging part for you all as leaders in your organization is if people start to feel that there's this stereotype that there's angry Black man or angry Black woman or emotional woman, Black woman, or any woman for that matter, you're going to lose out on great ideas and great content and great input and great leadership, because you're not listening to what's coming out. So, it's unfortunate. And with my students and professionals within NABA, I do a lot of counseling on, hey, speak your mind, but you also have to be mindful that others in the room, might take it a certain way. So let's think about the impact you want to have and the point you want to make. And it's a challenge, all the time. And I think that it's also that unconscious bias, because people see peaceful protesters, out, taking a stand against the things that we just talked about, the things that Chris spoke about, and like, oh, that's anger. That's not anger. That's passion in speaking and bringing attention to things that are going on.
Mhm.
So it's real though.
It is. And here's what I want to say around that to just give us something to think about. We could be angry. So that could be a fact. There are a lot of things happening, and people of color could be angry. They could be hurting. They could be frustrated, and passionate about seeing change. When we suppress those feelings because we're afraid of how you're going to respond, then it doesn't help anyone. And so if we are open or free to be open and share how we're feeling, the best thing you can do if you're not a person of color or not a person in a marginalized group is to just listen. To be open, be quiet, and just listen. Give us space to talk about it without fearing you've got to respond to it or check the box or make us feel better. Sometimes we just want to be able to express ourselves, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So go ahead, CB.
I'm just going to jump in here. So I agree that we have the right to be angry. I agree that we have the right to feel these horrible, it's not horrible actually. We have the right to feel the emotions that we're feeling. However, my challenge to my race is to take that anger, take that emotion, and learn the power of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a whole different science. And so it's not suppressing it, it's changing the delivery mode. And I think that's a skill set that we have not paid attention to and don't have enough experience in it. And, actually, I don't think the white race has either. And so that's one of the programs in workplace racial equality is let's flip the switch from anger and take that and move it into the power of influence. And let's see what happens.
Thank you, CB. That's fantastic. So I'm watching our time, and I know we've had such great, rich discussion. Thank you for the comments in the chat. I love the interaction and engagement, so we appreciate that. And the thumbs up, Karen. Thank you. That's awesome. So Chris, I want to go to you because you've said something a couple of times. I know right now, so far, we've talked a lot about race, about people of color and non-people, people who are not of color. But diversity truly does go beyond skin color. It goes beyond the visible and audible differences that we can see and that we can hear. So Chris, you talked about women a bit and members of the LGBTQ community. So tell me your thoughts about diversity and really broadening the lens around that.
Yeah, I think what we all have to do is think of the myriad of ways that anybody can feel different. I mean, I remember one time I brought the top guys from the U.S. leadership team at Pricewaterhouse down to Atlanta. In fact, we went to Pascal's for lunch. And I went and got Black people who had formerly worked for the firm, but who had quit to get them to explain why. And this one Black guy said, oh, I had no problems because of race. My problem was I went to Cornell and everybody in my office went to either the University of Georgia or Florida and they wouldn't talk to me. And so, and of course I asked him, did you learn to follow SEC football? He said, no. I said, well, that was your fault. So, I mean, it can be, I've been the Southerner in a room full of New Yorkers and they make little jokes about, this actually happened. They make little jokes about, oh, we're going to have more time allotted to this meeting because these Southerners speak so slowly. And of course, I have a ready-made retort for that. I think some of you might want to adopt. I said, yeah, the benefit of being a Southerner is that we speak so slowly, we can actually edit and evaluate our comments as they're coming out. Then I said to the person who said that, and this was in front of one of the top guys in the bank, I said, now, you fast-talking New Yorkers, as you just proved, speak so fast, you say stupid stuff before you have a time to edit yourselves. So yeah, I mean, I remember another time I went with our CEO at Price Waterhouse to a meeting of the top leadership team in LA, and a conversation ensued around the dinner table that assumed that everybody at the table was a Republican because we all made a lot of money. And when we got in the limo to go to the airport, I said, you know, Dennis, I need to start a new diversity program to protect the Democrats around here. So I think if you start to think like that, you will start to uncover the little school cliques in your office, the I live in this neighborhood clique in your office. And we also need to think about what I call reverse diversity. You know, I've challenged some organizations I consult to, like, do you have any male executive assistants? Because it can't look like the only people who can be like support staff are the women. And then, you know, some women came to me and said, oh, you're trying to take jobs away from us. I said, well, you know, I'm trying to help y'all take some jobs away from them on the other side, so don't complain.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think you have to embrace it, and you have to really get granular and understand all the little nuances. For example, you know, the East Indian community, people who come to this country from the country. I don't know if you know it or not, but there's a court case starting up out at Cisco, where the Brahmins, who are the highest caste in India, they are like 90% of the Indians who show up in the U.S. because they've got the money to get here. The Dalits, who are like the former untouchables, are only like 1.5% of the Indian Americans in the U.S., but they're 15% over in the country. And a Dalit, former untouchable person, is suing Cisco because he says the Brahmin Indians are discriminating against him. I will tell you, the more you educate yourself about this stuff, you will see it in all its manifestations. And I'll mention this one too. If you talk to enough women, you'll hear from a lot of women, the last person they want to work for is another woman. So if you're a supervisor, you need to be looking for that crap too. I mean, there's all kinds of BS that's going on out there if you're managing people. But in smaller organizations like most of you represent, the power you have is that you're closer to it all. You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to really get out there with people and watch stuff and watch people in meetings and see who rolls their eyes about when who's talking. Because diversity covers a lot of fronts.
That's right. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we always say that diversity is about being an other. And we all, everyone in this virtual space, we bring our otherness to work every single day. And so you've got to be thinking broadly when you think about diversity and inclusion, because all of us could probably raise our hand. We felt some sort of exclusion due to our otherness in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Hey, Earl, I want to talk to you a little bit as we begin to wind down about tokenization or tokenism, being the only, whether it's Black person, person of color, woman, LGBTQ member, differently abled, whatever it might be, being the only, and then having this pressure that you talked about to me privately about being the voice for all of that marginalized group. So can you talk about that just for a moment?
Yeah, being the only, I always said if I ever write a book, it was going to be called The Only Man in the Room, because the experience I've had of being sometimes the only African American in a room with clients or at work. I look at it as, when I was younger, it was somewhat intimidating, but I also welcomed the challenge of being the one of being the only one there and setting a great example for not only for myself, for my parents, but for for Black people, for Black men especially. So it was a challenge, but I also took it as an opportunity to excel, to prove that I could compete and excel, beyond what expectations were, and make a pathway. And there's the pressure. Make sure there's a pathway and open the doors for others like myself to come in. And it was a challenge. I was often used, utilized, thank you, as the poster boy, for diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, let's make sure we put Earl in front. I mean, in front of this. Let's make sure we get, shots of Earl. We got to have Earl in this. But then I go back and I say, well, what's our pipeline look like for diverse candidates? And it wasn't there. So it's also, the being in the position to influence and say, hey, well, you've got me up here. Let's get some more talented, diverse candidates in here. And, it's a fight, that you have to, you have to choose your battles, but it's certainly a way to get aligned with the right people to drive, to drive bringing in more talent. I can tell you, I go back to what I said earlier. I think about those 9 founders of NABA and how they helped pave the way. And so to be the only person in the room or the only person in the meeting, I was inspired and motivated by them that I need to make sure that I open doors for others to be able to have a seat at the table.
Thank you. It's interesting because there is opportunity, to your point, of being the only. For years and years when I worked in corporate America, I was always the only Black executive, woman, a female executive in the room. And most of the time, the only Black executive, period, male or female, in the room. And frankly, while it was an opportunity, it was exhausting. It was hard sometimes to be the voice for all Black people. It was hard to be the voice of all executive women. And I would caution us in this space to make sure that we're thinking about that as we're utilizing our people of color, our women, our differently abled people in our marginalized communities. And so as we wrap up, I have one more question, Chris. This is always an interesting discussion or debate, and I know you like interesting. So a lot of organizations out there are putting together ERGs, or employee resource groups. They're also called affinity groups. And for those of us who aren't familiar, it could be Black at, like our Black group of people, or our LGBTQ people, or our Hispanic at, or Latinx at. What's your thought, pros and cons around ERGs and affinity groups?
I think if you have enough of any one group to have a group, I think it can be a good thing. It gives people a safe space to talk about their issues, but I think it should always be accompanied by strong managerial involvement. You can't make it a satellite organization where, the Latinos are going to solve the Latino problems. For one thing, in many cases, actually, I would say in most cases, the members of the group don't actually know how to solve their problems. It's like asking sick people to come up with a serum. This is a managerial topic like any other, and it takes people with a managerial mindset. So, I have people all the time saying, the Latino group or the gay group or the women's group. I'll give you one perfect example. One of my clients I consult to, the women got together and decided that they wanted a mentoring program. And who did they want to mentor them? They said, well, we want the women partners in our organization to be our mentors. And I said, well, I got a news flash for you. The women partners in your firm are some of the least powerful people in your firm. Why the hell would you want to get all your mentoring from them? Why don't you go down and get some of the powerful white guys to mentor you? There's a gender point. And the women were like, well, how do we do that? I said, well, get the women partners who are friends with some of the male partners to ask them. And they went and they asked them, and some of the most powerful male partners in that firm got deep personal relationships with some women that they never would have had otherwise. But that idea would never have come out of the women's group, because a lot of times the ERGs can be very insular in their own thinking. And so I think they can be a good idea, but you can't just like set them free. And again, this is where if you've got enough of anything to have one of these, you really need some outside advice, and you be careful who you get it from too, because a lot of the people who run around giving advice are the same people who set up these satellite things back in the 70s and 80s, and they didn't work well that way. And I just want to say one other thing, because I know we're about to sign off. I know you guys are much smaller organizations for the most part. If you're on this call, you're on here because you want to do something for your Latinos. I know that's a big growing community in Atlanta. You want to do something for your gays and lesbians, etc. Just know I have a mantra I want to leave you with. It's probably my last comment. In the diversity space, when you're trying to recruit more diversely, you're trying to advance more diversely, special standards are never acceptable. So we're not going to lower standards. The special efforts will be required. And what's the special effort? The special effort is remembering that not everybody that's a man in your organization or white in your organization went to the best schools. And so don't put that requirement in place when you go out looking for diverse talent. You know, one of the smartest presidents in history turned out to be a crook. One of the smartest presidents in history was Richard Nixon. He went to Whittier College. But nobody could say that man wasn't an intellectual heavyweight. I've interviewed people from Millsaps College in Mississippi an hour before I interviewed somebody from Harvard. This actually happened. The Millsaps kid wiped the floor with the Harvard kid from my school. So stop putting the highest requirements in place for your diverse hires, and don't think you have to find the perfect candidate. Adopt somebody in your office today who you're gonna make a personal project. Treat them like that problematic middle child of yours. At least I have one of those. Jennifer, you can never show this recording in public because if my son sees this, I'm dead. Now I'm gonna leave you guys with that.
Thank you. And CB, I'm going to go to you for one last statement. What is one, and Chris, you gave some great action items because we want a call to action. We hate for you to leave, feel good, and then don't do anything with it. So we want to give you tangible action items. So CB, one final statement, one thing that someone can do right now. What do you think?
Stop calling me an African American. I'm a Black American. I am not an African.
We could have a whole segment, folks. I'm sure you're all probably like, what do we call Black people? We could have a whole segment on that. So no time, but thank you, CB. I love that. Earl, one thing, action right now.
One thing. I would say you're on this call and you're participating because you have an interest in diversity, inclusion, and awareness. And as you take some of the knowledge away from this call and you combine that with some of the efforts that you have at your offices or that you think you want to start, just, you know, I advise you to make it a movement and not a moment. If you're really genuine about it, make it a movement. If you're starting these ERGs or affinity groups, don't do the check the box. Make it a movement and continue to promote and invest in it over time. So make it a movement and not just be in the moment.
Thank you. That's great. And my final word of advice is don't boil the ocean. We've given you a lot of things to think about. You're probably feeling like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant. We get that. This is a big topic, a big issue. So don't boil the ocean. Pick one thing that you can do at a time. Create a plan. Be intentional about it. So let your heart and your mind line up. This is a business necessity. It's not a nicety. And so one thing at a time that you can accomplish in your organization goes much further than thinking about 25 things you want to do and never getting a foothold in it. So thank you so much for being here, Jennifer, and Karen and Bona, thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to you guys, but we are very grateful that you gave us this space to have this conversation, and we appreciate you.
It was a fantastic discussion. I don't know if Bona and Karen have anything to offer and say at the end here, but go ahead.
I'll say thank you. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for joining us and giving us lots of great insight and action items.
Yeah, as well. I very much enjoyed the topic. You guys are just incredible at providing the insights from your perspective and in a way that we can hear, right? Like, and I love the action items, the takeaways, and I'm going to go take that implicit association test myself and talk to my leadership about that implicit bias training. I think we all need to learn more about it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much. I feel sad that I won't see you, Chris and CB. We've seen each other. They've been on a few other panels. But we'll keep this conversation going. And even at the national level, we're talking about having a full-on series on D&I coming up soon, in addition to what we're doing with the conference and, of course, at the chapter levels. But I do think this is an extremely important discussion that, you know, as Cherie said in the beginning, it somehow has resurfaced this year in particular. And I guess it's time to, you know, make some good answers and solutions for this problem and issue that keeps going on and on. Any other thoughts? Or I'll say thank you for being here today, and hope to see you at the next Atlanta chapter event, if not other ones. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sherry. Thank you.
UCV. Bye.